Tony Bennett was an iconic singer whose career spanned across generations of fans. But did you know that looking into his family tree has some lessons for all of us exploring our own family history? I remember my parents listening to Tony Bennett when I was little, and I really enjoyed his collaborations with Lady Gaga. So when he passed away, I was curious to learn more about his life and his family history. I needed some basic information to get started, so off to Wikipedia. Hey, you have to start somewhere. And since Tony Bennett is a famous person, I figured I had a really good chance of getting at least the basic information, like his real name, Anthony Dominic Benedetto, and when and where he was born, 1926 in New York City. His Wikipedia entry has some decent citations, like two published biographies about him. But being a genealogist, I wanted some actual records. Not only are they more likely to be correct, but they also likely contain more information than what's on his Wikipedia page. Lesson number 1, always look to see if there is a better source. I have to admit, I was a little disappointed to learn that he was born in New York City in 1926. New York City is notoriously difficult for getting vital records from, although it is getting better. I decided to look at Tony Bennett's website. Not only did it have a wonderful timeline of Tony Bennett's life, but it also had a copy of his birth certificate. That leads me to lesson number 2, look through papers you already have. Now, admittedly, most of our ancestors do not have their own websites, but what many of us do have are old papers. I'm talking about those papers that get shoved in the back of the filing cabinet or end up at the bottom of a desk drawer. It is amazing how often we actually have copies of birth or marriage or death records for our ancestors, and we don't even realize it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard of this happening. Now that I was confident about when and where he was born and his parents' names, John Benedetto and Anna Sirachi, I wanted to find him in the census. I like to start with the most recent census that would be available for that person. And for Tony Bennett, that would be the 1950 U.S. Census. Tony Bennett served in World War II, and he was discharged in 1946. When he got out of the Army, he started working on his singing career. So I was crossing my fingers that he wasn't out on tour somewhere in 1950. I turned to the 1950 census on Family Search. I decided to start my search by using his real name, Anthony Benedetto. Even though I have his exact birth date, I like to add a little bit of a fudge factor when I'm searching in the census, because it's common for ages to be a little bit off in census records. I got several promising results, but which one is right and where do I even start? Well, his birth record was from Queens, New York, so that seemed like a logical place to start. There's an Anthony J. de Benedetto who's living in Queens, but his parents' names are completely different than what we have for Tony Bennett. The Anthony de Benedetto who's living in Brooklyn is married to a woman named Margaret. From what I read in Wikipedia, he wasn't married in 1950, so this probably isn't him. Orange County, New York is not New York City, but there's an Anthony Benedetto living in Queens with his mother, Anna. That seems promising. Let's take a look at that record. The name is indexed as Benedetto, not Benedetto, and there is some intriguing information on this page, but I want to see the actual image, because that's where the good stuff really is. And here living on 33rd Street is 24-year-old Anthony Benedetto, living with his widowed mother Anne, his brother John, and his sister-in-law Greta. And when we scroll over and look at Anthony's occupation, we see that he's a singer in a nightclub. The location is right, the mother's name is right, his age and his occupation is right. I feel very confident that this is Tony Bennett in the 1950 census. A couple of things that we can take away from this. First, consider what name your ancestor was using when the record that you're looking for was created. Now, Most of our ancestors did not have stage names that we have to contend with, but it's not uncommon for an ancestor to use different names at different periods of his or her life, especially the women. For example, if you're looking for the birth record of a female ancestor, search for her with her maiden name, not her married name. The big lesson here is don't grab a record just because the name is right. Consider all of the information that is on that record and compare it with what you already know about that ancestor. Think about your ancestor as a complete person, not just a name. When you consider things like their occupation, their age, where they were living, who they were living with, you're going to make better conclusions about the records that you're finding. There's even more we can find in that 1950 census. When you look at the line that he's on, you might notice there's a notation about supplemental questions. Tony Bennett actually landed on one of the lines in the 1950 census to answer additional questions. And those questions are at the bottom of the census page. And we learned that he was living in this house the year previously. We also see that his father was born in Italy, his mother was born in New York. As far as school goes, he completed 11th grade. And even though he said that he was a singer at a nightclub, he says that he's been looking for work for the last 16 weeks. Scrolling over a little bit more, we see that he was a World War II veteran. He was not a World War I veteran, nor was he currently in the service. Also, look at the household. There is Anna and Anthony, John, and John's wife Greta, and Greta is the very last line on this page. Here's a tip. Whenever you're looking at a census record and the household that you're looking at is at the very bottom of the page, always scroll to the next page. When we do that for the Benedetto household, we pick up 3 more people in the household. So always scroll to the next page when that household you're looking at is at the very bottom of a census page. Taking these lessons from exploring Tony Bennett's family tree and applying them to our own family history research, we can make a lot better conclusions about the records that we're finding, as well as discovering more about our ancestors. If you want to go even further in your genealogy, check out the video that's on screen right now and go make some great discoveries in your family history.